Looks like I found a shirt I shouldn't wear. Are you guys all seeing the waviness here?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I had no idea. I don't remember seeing that before. It's just a basic check shirt, but not Zoom friendly.
Morning, everybody. This is Melissa. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You have Corey and I this morning, and we are ready to go when you are.
Thank you, Melissa. And I see it's 9 a.m. All right. I'd like to call the regular board meeting of September 28th, 2021 to order at 9 a.m. So Melissa, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Director Balin?
Here.
Director Boatwright?
Here.
Director Kearns?
Here.
Director Murphy?
Here.
Director Ringen?
Here.
Okay, all 5 directors are present.
Thank you. Let's see. So I have a flag behind me. And so if you would all be so kind as to put yourself on mute and join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we'll open with the public forum, and at this time, we would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. So Corey, at this time, is there any member of the public that would like to address the board?
Not that's being indicated, no.
Okay, thank you. Then that will conclude the public forum, and we'll go into the consent calendar. And Melissa, would you kindly read the items on the consent calendar?
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of September 14th, 2021, and special board meeting of September 22nd, 2021. Item number 2, resolution authorizing an agreement with the State of California Department of Forestry for the CAL FIRE Climate Investment Fire Prevention Grant for the TUD Critical District Facilities Fuels Reduction Project.
Thank you. Is there any director that would like to pull one of or both of those items?
Director Boatwright has his hand up.
Good morning. I just have a point of order question. As far as item number 2 on the consent calendar, will that still be tracked with the resolution number, or is that even necessary for grant acceptance? I think this is the first time I've seen this type of item under a consent calendar. So just a point of order question.
Thank you.
Melissa, is there a resolution number that's going to go along with it?
That is correct. It would be resolution number 1821.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions, David Boatwright? Okay, thank you. Okay, so since there is no director that would like to pull of these items, is there any comment from the public on the consent calendar?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, then is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I would make that motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Melissa, will you please call for a vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
She's nodding yes.
Aye.
thank you. Director Regan,
Yes.
okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move to regular business. And Melissa, would you please read the first item?
Okay, item number 3, annual audited financial report for year ending June 30th, 2021.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Steve Sheffield, TUD Finance, your finance director, and I have the privilege of the first 3 items, pretty important items that come around once a year. And we have with us a couple individuals to assist us with the presentation. The first item is our annual audited financial report. And, you know, I'd like to point out one thing is that many governmental agencies, it's really a struggle to get it done by the end of the year. Technically, it has to go to the state by December 15th. However, you know, in all my years, I think the sooner we can get it, if we can get it to the board within 3 months of the close of the fiscal year, then that allows us to take any appropriate action, address it is. So to me, it's much more informative, and it means a lot more work on our part as well as the auditor's part. But we were successfully able to do that this year. So just to put in context, TUD, Tuolumne Utilities District, in accordance with law, is required to have an annual independent audit conducted by an independent certified public accountant. This information is filed with the State Controller's Office, and the minimum requirements of the audit shall be prescribed by the controller and shall conform to generally accepted auditing standards. And with us today, we have Ingrid Shepline. Ingrid's the managing partner of Richardson and Company. And Ingrid's going to present the fiscal year 21 audit report, as well as the statements, the notes, and the required supplementary information to the board. Ingrid does have a PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen and have that PowerPoint for the board. But I just want to say up front, you know, Richardson Company, we've had a good relationship with them. They are definitely one of the absolute cream of the crop leaders in the field of utility auditing. And I feel very fortunate that we have them to conduct our audit. So just checking in. Ingrid, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
There, we can hear you and we can see you. Would you like to say anything before I share my screen, or good to go?
We'll just jump right in.
All right. So give me a second here. Hopefully we'll get okay. And so you all should see the cover slide now. Are you? Okay. It's all yours, Ingrid.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm presenting today the results of the fiscal year 21 audit, and we issued 4 reports as a result of our audit. Those are listed here. First and foremost, we issued an opinion on the district's financial statements. The district prepares its own financial statements, so our objective with our audit is to issue an opinion on those financial statements, indicating whether or not they're fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We also issued this year a report on internal control and compliance, and this is as a result of the federal grant funds that the district received during the year. We also issued a required communications letter that contains certain items that we're required to communicate to you under the audit standards. And then we also issue a management letter that discusses any internal control related matters. Next slide. So our audit opinion was an unqualified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. We had minimal audit adjustments. There were some adjustments identified during the audit process, but they were minimal. We'll discuss that on a later slide. The internal control report indicates that there's no weaknesses in internal controls. And the report also indicates that the district complied with federal regulations related to its grants. Next slide. So this slide is a snapshot of the statement of net position, also referred to as balance sheet, that's on page 23 of the audited financial statements document. I'm just going to touch upon the highlights of some of the changes that occurred during between 20 and 21. If you have any questions, you can try to grab my attention and we can address those during the presentation. So the first line item there, the cash balances, you'll see a decrease of about 4.3 million, but that is just a result of the district expanding its investment portfolio to include investment securities. So that line item went down, but then a couple lines down, you'll see that investment line item increasing from no amount in the previous year to 4.6 million. In past years, the district has just invested in the state local agency investment fund, which has shown up under cash and cash equivalents. This year, the district has invested in individual securities that are in the investment line item. The other assets line item you're seeing there increasing about 4.7 million. That's related to a receivable that is from the IRWM related to a grant reimbursement, mostly the Phoenix Lake and other projects that are funded with those funds. There's a large receivable that that organization owes the district at the end of June. The capital asset line item, which is the infrastructure, land, buildings, equipment of the district, you'll see about a $6.5 million increase. There's a couple of factors that result in that change. During the year, there was about $10 million of capital expenditures for projects such as Phoenix Lake Restoration, Cuesta Heights, and various other projects. And then that is partially offset by about 3.3 million of depreciation. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the liability section of the balance sheet. Just a couple items to point out there. Long-term debt decreased slightly due to repayments being made on existing debt. There was no new debt that was issued during the year. The pension obligation of 13.9 million increased slightly by 724,000. Those amounts are calculated by CalPERS, and the entire liability of the entire pool increased, as well as the district's share of the pool increased, resulting in that increase. The net unfunded OPEB liability is about 8.5 million. It increased slightly or decreased slightly. The district is contributing about 70% now of the actuarially determined amount, and that's according to the policy that the district is working toward 100% funding, and so that percentage contribution amount is increasing 10% a year until full funding occurs. So there were contributions during the year of 1.2 million and premium payments on retirees of about 800,000. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the net position or equity section of the balance sheet. That first line item, invested in capital assets, represents the amount of your equity that's tied up in your infrastructure and is not spendable. So that makes up a majority of your equity. The restricted for capital improvements of 7.8 million is made up mostly of the unspent capital recovery charges that are collected as part of the sewer bills. And that's about 7 million out of that. And then there's also some capacity fees that are restricted for capital improvements. The restricted for debt service is amounts required by certain of the water fund debt to be held in reserve. So the unrestricted amounts that remain at the end of the year, I broke this out between water and sewer because I think it's important to see that the water fund unrestricted fund balance is still at a negative. However, that negative amount did go down by quite a bit during the year, 2.9 million, because of the net income of the water fund. So, so that deficit dropped considerably during the year. The sewer fund restricted fund balance also went up. It's a positive 7.2 million. And included within the sewer fund, according to the reserve policy that the board approved in June of 2020, there's about 9 million that's set aside in the various reserves within that sewer fund unrestricted amount. Next slide. So this is a summary of the statement of revenues and expenses that are on page 24 of the financial statement document. Some of the changes that we're seeing there, the operating revenues increased slightly, about $1 million. That's due to increased water consumption. There was no rate increase that was effective during fiscal year 21. So it's entirely due to increased consumption of water. Operating expenses, really just a minimal change there. The non-operating revenues, a slight decrease there. So overall, if you look at that net income before capital contributions, you had a $3.7 million net income compared to 3.2, a slight increase over last year. The capital contribution line item represents revenues received that are earmarked for use in capital projects. Most of that 6.9 million, about 5.8 of it represents the grants that were received that were used for capital projects. Also included in that line item are contributed assets, infrastructure constructed by developers that are donated to the or deeded over to the district. And then also capital facility charges are also included in that line item. So the federal grant fund that I mentioned makes up about 1.3 million out of that 6.9. Next slide. So the one new disclosure in the financial statements this year has to do with the cash and investment footnote in note 2 of the financial statements. As I mentioned earlier, the district previously had just invested in the state's local agency investment fund. And so this, as a result of now investing in securities, individual securities, the footnotes had to be expanded considerably on that. Those investments are recorded at fair value, not at acquisition cost. So the amounts recorded on your financial statements do fluctuate with the market. And that those market fluctuations are reflected within the investment earnings line item. So if you looked at the income statement, statement of revenue and expenses, you'll see investment income was a negative $700 compared to income or revenue of $506,000, and that's because the interest earnings are offset by the market fluctuations. There was a slight unrealized loss as of June of 2020. Next slide. So included within the required communications letter, we discussed there the audit adjustments. So there were 5 closing or audit adjustments or changes that were made during the audit process. Several of those were reclassifying entries. I think one might have just been an error, but overall, this is really a minimal number of adjustments considering the size and volume of activity of the district. So the fact that we only had 5 adjustments just indicates that Steve and his team really do a good job of accounting and following the accounting principles. And so overall, that this is considered clean, the fact that there were only 5 adjustments during the audit process. The letter also discusses significant estimates, and really most significant estimates included in the financial statements are for the net pension and OPEB liabilities. For the pension liability, CalPERS performs the valuation on an annual basis, and those liabilities can fluctuate considerably because of actuarial assumptions and also the estimated rate at which the plan assets earn interest, which can vary considerably from actual results. The net OPEB liability, the district hires an actuary to calculate that liability, and it also contains a number of assumptions, actuarial assumptions included in that. So overall, both of these liabilities did not change significantly during the year because the actuarial assumptions didn't change significantly. Next slide. So the report on internal control and compliance, it's at the very back of the financial statements, indicates that we noted no weaknesses in internal controls. Overall, the district has a good system of internal controls for having all the proper checks and balances to minimize any errors, risks of errors due to fraud or other items. These reports also indicate that we audited for compliance with the federal grant requirements and determined that the district is in compliance with those requirements. Next slide. So the management letter is also a clean report. If we had any areas where we would recommend improvements, we would include those in this letter. We had one recommendation in last year's letter that was implemented, and we had no new recommendations to include in this year's management letter. So overall, good clean audit, and we want to thank Steve and his team for being well prepared for the audit. We did do the audit remotely this year. So it required Steve and his staff to upload documents to our portal, and then we worked through phone calls and emails. So we want to thank them for being well prepared and allowing for a smooth audit process. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to any questions anyone has.
I have a question.
Yes.
And thank you, Ingrid. That was very clear. And I liked that you only had certain things on each slide so the board could really digest what was there. And so perhaps my question is a Steve question, and that is regarding the debt service for the special assessment districts. For a two-part question. How many of these special assessments do we have? And that one slide, kind of midway into the PowerPoint when it talked about debt service, were those first of all, the special assessment districts, sort of like Curtis Creek, for an example, where do they show up in the audit?
Sure. I mean, I think you're kind of talking about a couple separate things there, Barbara. First and foremost, I would encourage the board, if you do have any specific questions or interest, the audit report itself is 75 pages. It's a little overwhelming, but if you are interested in debt service, I believe it's footnote 5 that talks about our long-term debt. And when I hear you say special assessment, the only assessment district we have right now is the Clean Water Assessment District. And that was part of the regional sewer project that was done in the 80s and that we're still paying on and the county's collecting for us. And, recently you just adopted, the resolution to put that on there. When you mention Curtis Creek, what you're really referring to there are surcharges. And basically the surcharge is not the Clean Waters Assessment District is a loan or a note that we're repaying. The recovery on the surcharges is at the time that particular outside water district became part of TUD, there was an engineering determined cost to bringing their system up to our standards. And then that was shared between the existing people within the boundaries of that. And the surcharge was a specified amount that goes on to that. The district may or may not have actually gone out and got debt for that, but there is no more debt related to the surcharges. The surcharges will continue until the actual customers or ratepayers repay those surcharges. Most cases, at that time we did those surcharges, we allowed or provided for the ratepayers to repay it over 30 years, even though we had a repayment on an existing loan of 20 years. So each year we analyze those and they will drop off, but there is nothing on the financial statement other than surcharges collected, and that shows up on the income statement as far as debt recovery. But there wouldn't be anything on the balance sheet because there isn't a loan or receivable really necessarily related to those. It's very complicated. Surcharges are definitely very complicated, but different than when you talk about an assessment district. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. You helped really clarify the difference between debt recovery and debt service. So good. Thank you. Thanks.
Director Ringen.
Yes, this is a Steve question also. As I read through all of this material, which is very difficult for me because this is not my field of expertise in any way, shape, or form, but it looks like our debt is going to take a hit the right way come next year. It looks like there's several loans that are going to finally get paid off, and that should make that section look even better at next year's audit, I would think.
Well, my comment on that is the whole time I've been part of TUD, when I got here, I was very concerned with the amount of debt, with the, budget deficit, some of these other things. And so one of my goals has been to stabilize that, get back to a balanced budget, get back to doing rate increases as appropriate, not incur additional debt unless we absolutely have to, and essentially pay this off. I really wanted us to pay these down. And every year we've been paying off some of these, and we actually paid one off a little bit early this year to qualify for the USDA loan. Now, as my team will remind me and everything else, while that looks really good right now, it's all paid off. If you all remember, just like a couple weeks ago, we approved a loan in the amount of $25 million. So yes, we're paying it off, but with the USDA loan for regional, we're going to be bringing on this year, first an interim construction finance loan, which we're in the process of working on. I'll mention that in the staff report. But we will have this new USDA loan for the next 40 years. But your observation's correct, Director Ringen. They are being paid off. There's another one. We're very pleased that these are being paid off and eliminated. And the new ones are obviously at a lot lower rate than we had on some of these other ones. Director Boatwright.
Get all these buttons punched before I can talk. Steve, the assessment, clean water assessment, we're not still paying on the old wastewater plant while we're pulling the loan for building a new one, are we?
I think for about another 20 months or so. We're just about paid off on the assessment district, and we'll have it paid off before we have the new one.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if there's nothing else, I'd like to again thank Ingrid and her team. Again, like she mentioned, this was the first year we had done it with remote. They have done it with some of their other clients. It was very smooth. Their team knows TUD very well. They're a great resource to us, not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year. This new investments and some of the required accounting for that, Ingrid and her team were very helpful in assisting us in figuring out how to do it and what to do. And like I said, I feel very fortunate that we have them. Also, I couldn't do this audit without all of our teammates. I mean, there's involvement from the superintendents, from engineering, from all of finance department. And I think everybody did a really good job this year. I always worry about the audit. It's very stressful. It's a lot of work goes into this, but because of the job we're able to do throughout the year, it helps it. And to get this, to me, this is a very positive report for the district and for the board members. But we all know we have a lot going on, and our finances are going to require a careful continuing observation and reaction, and each year as we go forward, and even month to month sometimes. So again, thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, board members, for letting us present this. I know it's a lot to take in, but if you have any questions regarding details within the audit report, please let me know. It is posted to our website. It will be provided to USDA. It's provided to the state controller's office. It goes to the county. Just about everybody gets a copy if need be. But now that I said all that, I'm sorry. I see Jeff Kern's hand up and Barbara's hand up. So please.
Yeah, Steve, I don't have a question. I just want to congratulate you. I mean, you've got a big budget here that you have to manage, and to get a clean audit like that, you've done an excellent job, you and your team. And as the committee chairman for the finance committee, I appreciate you and your team, and you did an excellent job. Thank you. And thank you, Ingrid, for all your work with your company as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. President Balin.
Yes, yes, I wanted to echo the same comments. And remember, Ingrid, last time there was a recommendation that you had brought up, and I really appreciate the fact that that was not an issue, that it had been taken care of. So thank you, Steve, for that. And then we have no other additional recommendations. So thanks again, Ingrid, for all your hard work. And thank you for correcting that, Steve. That was great. Any other comments from the board? Corey, is there any member of the public that wishes? Oh, sorry, Director Murphy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again, echo what others have said, which is good job to both of you, Steve, and I'm spacing on your name.
Ingrid.
Ingrid, thank you. And I'm very glad to hear that the remote way of doing it this year was easeful and straightforward and worked for you both. And it sounds like that was a really efficient way of doing it. So it'll be interesting to see if we choose to do that in the future, because it sounds like maybe there's some great gains that we're getting from entering into this other cyber world of things. But I just wanted to say, Steve, just really appreciate your attention to detail on all of this. And thanks for being clear about that. As we're paying off these other, the old debts, we're moving into incurring new debts, and just so that we're aware of where we are on things. But that's the way it goes on these things. And but thanks for also pointing out that the loans that we are incurring have lower interest than the loans that we're paying off. So again, thank you for always paying attention to those details and making sure that we are doing the things that make the best financial sense for TUD. And Ingrid, thank you very much for your hard work in making sure that that's all coming through and all the ducks line up in a row. So thank you both.
Thank you, Director Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Corey, is there any member of the public that wishes to comment?
Not that I see at the moment, no.
Okay. So let's see. Is there I have to get through my agenda here.
Yeah, typically, we ask the board to accept and file the report, President Balin.
Okay, so that sounds good. Well, with no further comment, I'm calling for a motion.
I'll make the motion to that the board accept and file this report.
Second?
Happy to second.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, then Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Ingrid and Steve, and all your teams. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Melissa, will you please read let's see, item number 4, please?
Okay, presentation of the retiree healthcare plan, June 30th, 2021 actuarial valuation.
So still with me, hang tough. We got another couple items. I led off with the audit. It's really the biggest one, but I think it's probably the most understandable, which may not seem that way to you all. And I see Doug Pryor's with us. I'm glad you're still with us, Doug. I kind of debated whether to have Doug go first or the audit, but you know, I thought this one's a little more, I don't know if complicated is the right word or esoteric, but you know, I'm glad we have Doug with us because he's really, really good at this, and we've been working together for a number of years. Especially for the new board members. I think some of the other board members have gone through this before with Doug, but really what we're talking about today, the district provides medical insurance for retired employees, subject to certain limitations. This was an existing benefit of the county water district at the time of formation of TUD in 1992. This type of employee benefit is referred to as other post-employment benefits. You'll hear us use OPEB quite frequently. To me, it makes more sense just to say it's retiree health care. I mean, essentially is what it boils down to. TUD is required to measure and disclose an amount for annual OPEB costs. Annual OPEB cost is determined by an actuarial valuation required every 2 years. Actuarial evaluations involve estimates and assumptions about the probability of occurrence of events far into the future. And this is where we bring in our expert. Doug Pryor is vice president and an actuary with Bartell Associates. Bartell Associates is an extremely well-known and highly reputed actuarial firm. The state and CalPERS uses them extensively. They're speakers at various Aqua and CSDA ones, and you know, we've worked with Bartell Associates a number of years now. I'm very happy with their work. Doug's sitting at his beautiful home here. He's not in the office like the rest of us, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Doug, at this point, and I'm assuming you can share your screen or you have your slides. You and I didn't coordinate that, but if you need me to help, let me know. All yours, Doug.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be here today. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen and get this set up. Bear with me for a moment. So hopefully everyone can see this. This is the document that is in the board packet. This is the June 30, 2021 actuarial valuation, which is determining contributions for next year, fiscal year 2022-23 and fiscal year 23-24. This is really kind of a condensed version of the full actuarial evaluation report, but I kind of wanted to run through some key points. We have about 15 slides here. I'll try to run through them quickly. To the extent you have questions as we go along, that would be fine to ask as we go along, or questions at the end obviously would be fine too. We have a brief summary here on the benefits provided under the plan. Really, the district has 3 tiers for groups in general hired before 2005, 2006. You have these dollar caps here, which vary by coverage. The current year dollar caps are listed under this column. The first of the two sections here. So for single coverage, $936 cap. For two-party, a little under $1,900. For family, $2,400. Second tier is hired before 2013. And there's what's called the state vesting schedule. So you have caps here. These tier 1, tier 2 generally provide for full medical premiums paid by the district. The final tier here, which is you're starting to really sort of reap the benefits of seeing this, is what's called the PEMCA minimum. So employees and retirees are covered under the CalPERS healthcare program. The acronym is PEMCA. And as part of participating in PEMCA, you're required to pay at least a minimum amount towards retirees. The current year amount is $143 per month. And that would be for anyone who retires directly from TUD. Employees, if someone works there for 10, 15 years, but leaves and does not directly retire under CalPERS, they would not be due a benefit under this plan. We have historical, what we call pay-as-you-go amounts. These are amounts that portion of the premiums that are paid by the district each year. We have going back to kind of the beginning when analysis was performed on this plan, $200,000 back then. So you can see it's up over threefold, and this is a 12-year period being shown here. So I think it's just good for perspective to see how much costs have escalated. Now the district is pre-funding, and what you're going to see as we kind of run through this is you're starting to reap the benefits of pre-funding, or you certainly see the light at the end of the tunnel for the benefit of pre-funding. These benefits, there is one, Steve mentioned, this is maybe a little esoteric topic, and I think it really doesn't get much esoteric than this here, which is called the implied subsidy. In addition to kind of the benefits I talked about on the first slide, this implied subsidy is the sort of the portion of the premium that's being paid for active employees. It's really essentially being used to pay for retiree medical costs. And just briefly, let me run through this. Example is across the x-axis here is age. If you had a $600 premium, the green line here, which PEMCA charges the same premium regardless of age, that was what's being charged. But as we know, as we get older, we use more medical services, and the blue line is showing sort of the cost by age. And so what the implied subsidy is saying is that, look, when you pay a $600 premium for a 25-year-old, that is more than the cost to provide medical coverage for that person. And for the 64-year-old on the other end of the spectrum, that's not enough. And what's really happening here is that the premium here that's being paid for the active being used for the retiree. That's the subsidy, implied subsidy between the active premium and the retirees. And what happens is that difference between the $800 here in this case and the $600 premium, $200 is what's known as the implied subsidy. So trust me, I think that's probably the strangest part of this presentation, but it's required to be included in these valuations. I just kind of want to briefly cover it because it is a portion of the liability that we're valuing. We have historical counts here. Just to kind of give you a perspective, this red line here are the number of retirees that are receiving a benefit from the district. The blue historical participant active employee counts. Kind of the slope of this red line on the counts is similar to what we saw in the very first slide in terms of benefits that are being paid. It's escalated quite a bit. And you can see as of the valuation date, you had a slight decrease in the counts. 75 employees were included in the valuation this time. There were 80 before, so a slight drop in the number of active employees. That's going to also help a little bit when we come to you'll see the costs later on. One other thing I will mention is of these 75 employees here, you now have over half of them are covered by that final tier of the PEMCA minimum, which is a drastically lower cost benefit than those first two tiers where you're paying really the full premium for retirees. We have a few, I really gonna just talk about the discount rate in terms of assumptions. And we have a couple of slides sort of talking about the discount rate. So there are actually 3 strategies available in the trust that TUD is using under CRBT. Strategy 1, 2, and 3. You're in strategy 1. You can see the asset allocations, target allocations for strategy 1. So 59% global equity, 25% fixed income on down. We, Bartell Associates, every 4 years put together a model in terms of where we think the returns will be on each of these asset allocations, and come up with a study that then, now I should just point out, we're not investment advisors, but what we do is we survey outside investment advisors, put together our model. Based on that, we're recommending an update to the discount rate of 6.25%. So that's what we're using in this valuation is a long-term expected return on assets of 6.25%. That's down from the previous study at 6.75%. And there's kind of some detail here. So there's really 2 components. We sort of use what's known as a building block approach, where we first take the real rate of return, add in inflation, to get really the total return or discount rate. In the previous study, really both these components, the real rate of return and the inflation rate, were 25 basis point higher. So what we're looking at is a drop in the discount rate from 6.75 down to 6.25. You know, the fact of the matter is, on the real rate of return, kind of across the board, we're seeing investment advisors expectations are lower for future returns, and that's kind of reflected in this first line. As you may be aware, CalPERS is going through a similar process right now with their the retirement portfolio and their assumptions, and they're looking at kind of similar. It's a different portfolio, of course, but they're looking at decreases in their discount rate that they're going to be recommending to the board coming in up in November. One more slide, I think, before we kind of start getting to some results. I think it was mentioned earlier, the district has been on a phase-in to pay the full actual determined contribution using the schedule listed here. Started back in 2019 to pay 50% of the full actual determined contribution. For the current year, you're at 80%. You have 1 more year at 90, and finally in fiscal year 24, you'll be paying 100% of the full actual determined contribution. As I've moved forward, we have a few slides on assets. From here forward, when you see numbers, they're going to be in thousands of dollars. What is probably many people well aware, maybe not well aware of the exact number here, but the CRBT return was quite impressive. 27.5% return in fiscal year 2021. Wasn't so great, a little subpar in 1920, 3.5, but overall over the last 2 years since the previous valuation, things have been, returns have been pretty darn good. As you see here, as of the valuation date, $10.7 million in market value of assets. What I will mention is when we determine the contributions, recommended contributions, we're not using the full we're not using the full $10.7 million to determine the contribution. We're using kind of an actual value of assets, which is holding a reserve, and the value of assets we're using for contributions is about $1.1 million lower at a 9.6. You kind of see that in a subsequent slide. We have one slide here on sort of perspective on the assets. What we're showing here is back to the beginning of time when the district started up the trust back in 2009-10. The green bars are the amount that went into the trust. The blue is the net investment return in each year. So if you kind of went back to the beginning of time, took the sum of contributions going in plus the net investment return, you get to the total asset value today. There have not at this point been benefit payments paid out of the trust. So initially there's quite a bit of money put in. That funding was then cut off for a couple of years before there was some money put in, and then you started on that ramp up policy to get back to 100%. So those sort of the green bars showing the additional contribution. As you can see, the massive investment return here in 2020-21, which was quite good news. In terms of the funded status, June 30, 21, I think the board packet cover memo mentioned the rather favorable news here. Let's start with kind of the bottom line. The unfunded liability was 8.4 million in the previous study. That's dropped down to 5.9 million. So quite good news. If you look at the actual accrued liability previous study, about 15.8 million, actually dropped down to 15.5. There are a couple of reasons for that. Premiums increased less than we expected. There were some experience gains, some just new measurements in the new valuation helped keep that the liability down. And as you can see, the actuarial value of assets that we're using here increased from 7.4 to 9.6. As I mentioned earlier, there's actually 10.7 million in assets, but we're only using 9.6 to determine their contributions. We have a historical funded status. You forget about the colors for now. The height of each bar is the actual accrued liability on each valuation going back to 2008. The red is the, there's kind of really two red lines there. One is actuarial value of assets, one is market value of assets. So you can see overall the funded percent is, I should have mentioned on the previous slide, is simply the assets divided by the actual accrued liability. So you can see the funded percent progress, improve over time. Really, we'll get to June 30, 2021 here, and you can see there's quite a bit of difference between the actual and market value of assets. So 62% funded on a actual value of asset basis, even better, 69% on a market value basis. Just real briefly, the other sort of graphic that's embedded in this is the bars, the colors within the bars. The blue, whether it's light or dark blue, is the liability for retirees, former employees of the district that are now receiving a benefit. The green is the actual accrued liability for active employees. So you can see where your assets are. You now, on a market value basis, have assets that exceed the value of the retiree liability, which is a good place to go to be. And you're kind of chipping away with targeting 100% funded in the long term. In terms of the how this all translates to recommended contributions, we first start in this section, ADC, actual determined contribution. Once again, these numbers are in thousands of dollars. The 2019 study covered 2 years, and the recommended full actual contribution was about 1.4 million per year for those 2 years. And now we come to the current study, and that number has dropped significantly down to slightly over $1 million for each year. So there are a number of reasons for that. As I mentioned, the experience gains, the premiums increasing less than expected. You had slightly less number of active employees than the previous study. You have more people coming in under that the final tier with the PEMCA minimum. So it's kind of just good news all around. Now, the district's funding policy is to look at that full actual determined contribution. And for 22-23, you're at a 90% target. So we basically take that full actual determined contribution, back out the benefit payments, and get to a trust contribution at 90% level of $163,000. I highlighted the last 2 rows here because in the board packet, we had typos in these 2 items, and the numbers were not footing. Everything else was right. We just didn't get the right numbers in these cells. But the funding policy is to, at this point, not take benefit payments out of the trust, put money into the trust, that eventually down the road will be used to pay those benefit payments. But this is showing for the current valuation, the last couple of years, the recommended trust contribution under the funding policy was $300,000 to $400,000 to $500,000, and we come to this valuation that's now dropped to under $200,000 per year. We look at this on a longer term basis. This is where you see the really good news. This is a 11-year projection here. It's a little bit of kind of a busy table, but let me focus on really, let's start with this column, the pre-funding column. So first, a kind of a overall comment about pre-funding. If you don't pre-fund, you're paying the benefit payment. So why do you pre-fund? Well, you don't pre-fund to always pay more than the benefit payment. So there'd be no reason to do that. You pre-fund because you're going to reach a point, hopefully, where the investment earnings in the trust are going to be enough to offset some of your benefit payment costs. And ultimately, you have to pay less than the benefit payments. You're still in that initial phase where you're paying more than the benefit payments because you have these two benefit payment items, the cash benefit and the implied subsidy, and then you have additional amounts to pre-fund. Typically, we do these tables for 10 years, but we added 11th year because at the end of the 10th year, in year 11, what you see is you're not putting extra money into the trust. What really happens at that year is that your total cost is about $400,000, and that's actually significantly lower than the almost $1.2 million in benefit payments. So it's a ways out there, but you can see the benefits of pre-funding on a cash basis are projected to be 11 years out, and obviously quite a good place to be. The other thing I will point out is that overall contributions, we do these as a percent of payroll. When you take the benefits you're paying to retirees plus the pre-funding as a percent of payroll, you can see it's around 16% initially. It's declining to 15% because you're tier 3 people coming in under the PEMCA minimum. But that the benefits are not related to payroll, but this gives you a benchmark of kind of what this plan costs. You might compare this to CalPERS contributions, for example, but what you're looking at is 15 to 16% of payroll over a 10-year period, dropping off in year 10, once that unfunded liability is paid off or expected to be paid off, which drops down to 4.7%. Okay. Of course, the first couple of years are sort of actual numbers covered on the current valuation here, because this valuation covers these first 2 fiscal years. Following that is really just a projection. After that, of course, in future years, there's required to be evaluation every 2 years, and the numbers will be updated. But this gives you an idea of where you're headed and sort of the benefits you're expected to see from the pre-funding. We have a couple last slides here comparing a few items on a projected basis. So this one covers trust contributions from the previous valuation and the current valuation. So you can see here the light top blue line is from the previous 2019 valuation, what we projected the trust contributions to be. You still had a number of periods in the ramp up to the full contribution from that valuation, but you can see the drastic drop here based on the current valuation in terms of what you'll contribute to the trust. And finally, the last slide we have here is showing I talked about this concept of, you have your pay go, you're paying the full 80, you pre-fund so that long term at some point your costs will be lower than the pay go. So this is on a projected basis showing the pay go where we expect it to be, which is the red line. And you can see the blue is the actual determined contribution in each year. And so you have this on the previous few slides back, we had this table, I was pointing to the difference. You can see here that dramatic decrease here in the 11th year, where you hopefully, if things go as expected, of course, a lot of things will change between now and then, but if things go as expected, the projection is showing that in that year, you'll be at the point where you'll pay significantly less than your pay-as-go costs. So that's the final slide I had. I was trying to just run through that all pretty quickly. Overall, as you can kind of see, it's pretty good news from the valuation. We are holding that reserve on the assets in terms of determining contributions. Things would look even better. That smoothing for the assets in terms of holding that reserve, that policy has been in place for since we've been doing the valuations. We think it's a good idea. We'll have to hang on tight here to see what happens with investment returns. So to the extent markets start to turn on us here, you will have that reserve to sort of smooth things out and draw that reserve down is the way it would work in future years. So with that and those comments, I'd love to hear any questions or comments from the board.
We do have Director Murphy with her hand up for comment.
Well, I have a couple of questions, and that is just establishing some background that I realized I didn't understand, not specific to the actuary report, which I felt was pretty clear. So here are my questions. Does TUD pay full premiums for medical for both active employees and retirees? And then the next one is, how does Medicare factor into this? Because my understanding is when people hit 65, in most retirement things, you stop receiving medical benefits from your employer and you switch over to the Medicare instead. So I guess those are my two big questions.
Yeah, so maybe Steve, I'll take the retirement part and I'll set aside what you're paying for active employees for now. So in terms of what you pay, for retirees, the first two tiers, you generally are paying full premiums because these caps are relatively high. There is very few single premiums that are above $935 a month. Or the two-party or the family. So for the first two tiers here, you're paying pretty much full premiums. Not quite that pre-65. Now what happens is when Medicare kicks in, the premiums are a fraction of what they are pre-65. So this benefit is for the retiree's lifetime. To give you an idea, the highest, once a retiree turns age 65 and becomes Medicare eligible, the highest premium is $383 a month. So you would pay, so as you can see, that 383 is well below that number and well below this number, assuming an employee is 100% vested. This schedule, this tier here does have a vesting schedule that applies that I didn't mention down here, but most people are close to 100% vested when they retire. And so what you have is the premiums do decrease at age 65. At Medicare, once retirees become Medicare eligible, that ultimately means the district is paying less in premiums for the retirees. That's factored into the valuation. And so we have that lower cost built into the model in terms of what the district will be paying from this plan. So was that I wanted to cover the retiree
well,
questions.
Let me ask another question on that then. So
Maybe.
On that, right? Like with a lot of the state plans, if you're a state employee, once you hit 65, you just shift to Medicare and your benefits, your old employer doesn't pay for a supplemental medical plan on top of Medicare. But for TUD, we are continuing to pay for, in addition to Medicare, we are continuing to pay for a full service plan for each employee until they die and their families, correct?
Yeah, maybe let me jump in here and help out. I think I understand your questions, Director Murphy. I think really, Abby, would you be willing to kind of summarize? I think you're much better at this as far as first, the distinction between an existing employee and a retiree, and then second of all, what happens with our plan when they hit Medicare age?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. So I think Mr. Pryor covered it mostly for retiree. The only thing I would add, just that might clarify for you, Director Murphy, is Yes, the retirees, once they hit 65, are required to enroll in a Medicare plan. And then at that point, Medicare becomes primary and the PERS plan becomes secondary for the people on the plan that are 65 or older. At that point, at 65, the change in the retiree plan is that it covers for the retiree and one dependent, so not a full family. And so that's why, like Mr. Pryor said, the rates go down significantly with a Medicare. It's called a Medicare supplemental rate. And so, and then for active employees pay 15% of the medical premium that they choose from a single party to a family plan. Does that cover your
Yeah,
question?
that was perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Abby.
Welcome.
And retirees pay no no part of the premium. That's covered by TUD.
That's virtually true if you look at the first tier, yes, it is paid at 100% under the vesting schedule. There is, depending on that cap 100/90 formula that is shown there, there is usually a small gap in the maximum premium and what the district pays. So it could be $100 or $200 that there is a share on the retiree side for that middle tier for the folks that are retiring under the vesting schedule.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think it might help too, some context for you, Director Murphy, is I like to tell the story that, you know, when this benefit came along, full family health insurance was $200 a month. So nobody thought it's not that big a deal. We'll negotiate out. We'll pay $200 a month. Well, what happened between, you know, that 1992 and 2000 was medical costs exploded. And so you can see what the district did here. This is a good slide to show it. That, you know, what could we do? How are we going to do this? And we didn't have that many retirees. So along came 2005. We said, well, we're going to put in a vesting schedule, and that's going to assist. Somebody's got to be here at least 20 years before they're going to get that full payment. And so that helped with it. Well, then along came PEPRA and some of the other changes. And so then in 2013, we implemented this PEMCA because, again, the cost had just gone out, you know, through the roof. But the goal and objective when we joined the trust back in 2008, 2009, was to ensure that this promised benefit would be there for our employees. And the idea was, how can we fund this? How can we make sure that the long term, we're going to be able to afford it and we're going to be able to keep it? And so that's when that trust was established. We did have some change in board members who came along and said, nope, we're going to stop contributing to this. And that kind of set us back because health insurance costs continued to go up, even though we weren't funding the trust. So, you know, there's a lot of good news in this report. I know it's very complicated. It's a lot to take in. But again, it's something we're required to do, both because of our trust and because of financial reasons, but also it's a way for us to track, you know, because it's a big number. The unfunded liability for both PERS retirement and for retiree health is a big number. But in this case, it's actually gone down. So.
And one more question for you, Steve. I think it's for you, which is, so with the possibility of the acquisition of through PG&E, we would have a need for additional positions. We'd be growing a little bit with TUD. And does that get factored in here? Because I know we are seeing that how it's working with fewer employees, but my guess is over the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing more retirees, and we're also going to see more active employees.
Yeah, this valuation and a lot of actuaries, you know, there's mortality tables, there's trends as far as employment and retirement age, all those sort of things that Doug and his team work their magic on. There is nothing specifically related to the acquisition in this one. As we know, like it's kind of a point in time. So really Doug's analysis here is as of June 30th, 21. And that's why it shows compared to 19, it actually went down a little bit. But we know we've been hiring additional employees to fill some of these unfilled positions. And another big distinction is when an employee comes on board more for retiree than this, but are they already a CalPERS member? And so that has an effect from the retirement side, not really so much from the insurance side. But Doug's numbers as of point in time, and he uses that to project the next 2 years' contributions.
Very good.
Good
Thank you, sir.
questions. Like I said, I know it's a lot, everyone. I would encourage you, if you have any burning questions, we got the resident wizard here in Doug. But you can also come back to me, and Doug's real great about phone calls, emails, whatever we need on that.
Thank you, Steve. Corey, any other comments or questions from directors?
Not that I'm seeing, no.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Murphy.
Just just to make things crystal clear for myself, right? So on this, this trust is only for the medical benefit. It's not for the CalPERS contributions, just for
That's correct.
medical.
And you heard Doug referred to Sept. It's California Employee Retirement Benefit Trust. It's actually a separately funded, irrevocable trust that can only be spent on retiree health benefits, nothing else. It's not on our financial statement. We continue to contribute to it, but the only way we could take money out is to either pay these retiree health benefits. And that's what's grown so much. Some of Doug's numbers, like I put on the staff report, the actuarial plan's gone up to 9.6 million. I think Doug showed 10 million on that. That's the trust that's being held. It's a separate organization that's part of CalPERS. But this is purely retiree health benefits, no retiree benefits at all. Good questions.
Thank you, Steve. I know this has been a roller coaster over time to stabilize, and I thank all the boards that have worked so hard on restructuring this so that we can be responsible to our employees and our ratepayers. So it's been quite an adjustment over time. So thank you. Any other comments from directors before I open it up to public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Corey, is there any public comment on this?
Not that I'm seeing, no.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board. And once again, thank you, Doug, for your clear explanations, and Steve, you as well. So with that, any further discussion? Nope. All right, then I will call for a motion to accept and file this report.
Somebody.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, so Director Ringen, you moved, and was it Director Boatwright? Did you second?
Kern.
Okay, thank you, Jill. All right, very good. So Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatwright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Doug, for your clear and concise presentation. It's amazing to see just the work, again, that's gone into this over time. So appreciate your explanations and your presentation. Thank you. And thank you, Steve, and your crew as well.
Thank
Good
you,
job.
Doug.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, with that matter, we will move on to item number 5, Melissa, will you please read the regular business item 5?
Okay, annual 66013D capacity charges report for year 2021.
Last one, everyone, I promise. Not near as complicated as the last two. And I should have said before, Doug and his team do a great job, but they can't do it without a whole lot of detailed information. And that's really driven by Danica Bland, my accountant who handles payroll, and her working with Abby on HR. The two of them provide a tremendous amount of information that allows Doug and his team to do that. So thank you goes to Abby and Danica as well. They do a great job with it. With that said, this last item is really, I want to characterize it as a housekeeping item. We're driven so much by government code sections and regulations. So this item is what we refer to as our 66013 report. Government Code Section 66013D requires an agency receiving capacity charges to make available to the public within 180 days after the last day of each fiscal year. Certain information is detailed in the attached copy of Government Code Section 66013. It's been around for a really long time. The purpose of the attached capacity charges report for fiscal year 21 is to comply with this California Government Code section. The report details the charges that were deposited, the beginning and ending balances of the funds, interest earned, description and amount of expenditures of funds included, including the percentage funded by capacity charges, improvements anticipated to be undertaken in the following fiscal year, and a description of each interfund transfer or loan made from capacity charge funds. And in the attachments, you can see there's two. There's a capacity charges report for fiscal year 21, and then the actual government code section. Now, Jesse was integral in helping us with this. This has been going on for forever. I mean, I think they passed 66013 in the 80s or 90s, whenever that was. And this, like I said, I'm not going to go through each page of the report unless any board members have it. But to put it in context, our existing water rules and sewer ordinance provides for certain capacity fees associated with connection to our system. Jesse identifies those. They could be a purely connection fee, like we put in a meter for you or whatever, but these are really what's in the term capacity charges. So what happens with that is any new connection, we identify those, they're for specific purposes adopted in ordinance. We track those in the accounting system, and then we're required to accrue interest to them if they're not spent, and as they are spent, what we spend them on. So really, that's what this report is consistent with past year's reports. It'll be posted on our website. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Steve. Corey, is there?
Director Reagan. Sorry, I'll call it out, Barbara.
Steve, these capacity charges, fees, whatever you want to call it, those are the ones that can only be spent if it's derived from sewer connections or whatever capacity, they can only be spent in sewer, and if they are derived from water, they can only be spent in water. Is that correct?
Well, I'd like to characterize capacity charges are a lot more restricted than that. What you're talking about in general, if we charge, our charge for water, base fee water, base fee, sewer, those have to be spent on water and sewer as well. Everything's separated. But a capacity fee is for a specific, like what's identified in there, a specific capital reserve charge, a specific capacity charge. Those are even more restrictive. Yes, they have to be spent in water if they're collected for water, but even taking a step more than that, if it was collected for supply, if it was collected for treatment, if it was collected for storage, we have to separately maintain those from the time we collect them to what we spend it on, and it's much more restricted as to what we can spend it on than, say, a general water service charge. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It's just, it's a little confusing, and that's why I wanted to ask the question, is that, like, if a person were to ask TUD to get hooked up for a new house that they built, let's say. So now you've got a water hookup and a sewer hookup, let's say. The connection charge is going to be broken down
Yes.
into, okay, so that's where the confusion was for me. So you
Yeah.
got capacity, and then you have supply, and whatever else there is. And so what you're saying is that those categories have to be maintained separate and only go to that activity.
Correct. If you came in and you met with Antonio, he has a form that breaks out. You know, they might charge you for a meter box. Then they're going to charge you for a supply fee, a treatment fee, a storage fee, and they're all broken out on that application form. And if you were to go to the water rules, the last appendix, it spells out how those capacity fees are calculated and what the current amount is. And so when we take your money, you know, you come in and Antonio says the total amount for water and sewer is whatever, $8,000. It's going to be broken down. And when we record it in the accounting records, we show it by each one of those items. And that's what's on this page 3 of 5. It'll show in there as far as what's collected. And so you have water, and underneath that are the 4 categories: capital reserve, supply, treatment, storage. Here's what we collected. Here's what we spent it on. If we didn't spend it, we got to carry it forward to next year's report.
So if staff identifies a certain issue, whether it be water or sewer, that needs to be upgraded or enlarged or whatever you want to say, then it falls on you and the finance department to know where that category of money is and how much it is and whether or not it's going to cover the project.
Yeah, we coordinate closely with engineering, and so any new connection will be identified to us, and then as the money is received, we will record it appropriately. I think what you just described too may even go a step farther and say that might be part of the developer agreement, and that would be coordinated with Eric and Antonio and the specific developer. But yes, anything they collect from a customer, a new connection, whatever else, is going to be identified, and specifically because we have to legally. You know, Jesse's the one. When I first got here, I had Jesse, we need help. Please tell us what is a capacity fee and what is not a capacity fee. Because you could have a certain charge, like I said, if we're just charging you for an oversized box or I don't know, a special whatever meter or something like that, that's not a capacity fee. The capacity fees where we've gone through an engineered, designed cost that's been identified and made part of our water rules. We're charging you this much for a tank. We're charging you this much for this additional capacity versus just a hookup. So, direct answer to you, accounting's always coordinating with engineering and identifying it by water, sewer, and if a capacity fee, these categories.
Well, it sounds like to me that could be quite a project. I'm glad you're doing it, not me.
Every day. Thank you. Sorry if I overkill this. Director
No,
Murphy.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, my question again is a little bit, it's on some stuff that was on and then got pulled from the last agenda moving forward. Just brought this stuff all to my attention of the thing that sometimes when developers are putting in a new development, the water or the sewer gets a little complicated. and requires extra tanks, extra pump stations and stuff like that. And it looks like in some of those cases, the developer pays the initial cost of putting all that stuff in and then wants to turn it over to TUD to manage, which means that TUD then inherits all of the electricity costs for that and all of the tank replacements, pump replacements, what to deal, how to deal with it when there's an emergency power outage, which we're seeing more and more with all the generators and the support staff, and then the crews having to go out and deal with things on emergency basis and stuff. Is that included in, like, is that an additional line item within capacity charges, or does that need to be an additional surcharge that's put on that's not related to capacity fees, but is another way that we can charge people? We can have the people who are actually benefiting from all this complication that wasn't part of our system being added to the system, so it doesn't become a burden on the system, basically. Is that within capacity charges, or is that a separate thing?
Well, I guess my technical answer would be it depends, because it's different almost for every particular, if we were to look at the dialysis center, or we were to look at the Chicken Ranch Creek extension, or we were to look at Les Schwab, all of those things are coordinated through here. Capacity fees, and Jesse, feel free to jump in here if I'm going off the rails, but capacity fees is very much a legal definition within this California Water Code. And that's where this particular report says you got to identify these, you got to track them, you got to do that. So in your case, like let's say, I don't know, Curtis Creek Elementary School is going to put in, a brand new system. When it's all said and done, they're going to hand it to us. Or Black Oak Creek does a treatment plant. They said, look, we'll build this, we'll pay for it and the whole bit. There aren't really any capacity fees associated with that. They're basically building an asset. They tell us how much it costs, and then they provide it to us. Now, if you go back to the audit report on the statement of cash flows, down at the bottom, it talks about donated assets. You might say, hey, who's donating to TUD? What's that about? Well, that's where that shows up. A while back, the city of Sonora wanted all new fire hydrants. They got a grant to do it and the whole bit. Well, guess what? As soon as they were done with the fire hydrants, they, here, TUD, they're yours. Oh, thank you very much. We get to take care of them for the next 100 years. But that's where that is. So what you described, or a donated asset, typically would not have a capacity fee component. Now, typically, these developer agreements, there will be a capacity fee component in addition to that. You may have the developer who's going to put in this and then give us the asset, but in addition to that, there's usually, Eric, jump in here if I'm off track, there's usually going to be a capacity fee component that we're going to collect from them, and that would be part of this report. Clear as mud?
No. Because I'm just asking specifically, so this is for things that would be household water, right? Household sewer. That's what the developments that are going to be coming up in front of us. So I'm just asking this question before we talk, kind of because it's related. So on those things, like a development is going in, instead of having the water gravity fed or the sewer gravity fed, which would be the normal way of doing things. If a developer wants to create a system where it's more complicated with that, and they're trying to get water where it wouldn't naturally flow, and there is no tanks, and so it's got to have this pump system and more tanks and stuff. The question was, is it under capacity fees that all of that, if we take on that system, that they have a higher capacity fee because they have a more complicated system, or the capacity fees straight across the board, and then everyone in the whole system helps pay for that more expensive chunk of the system through each individual's capacity fee? Or is there a secondary thing like a surcharge that we can put on that for the ongoing maintenance that we know that, and the replacement stuff that's going to be associated with that more complicated system that wouldn't have been something that would have been part of our normal system, except that it got donated?
Director Murphy,
or is that?
a developer's agreement is an agreement under which the developer creates the capacity. They build it in order to serve a new area or something along those lines where water or sewer was not previously provided. A capacity charge is generally, and as Steve mentioned, there can be overlap, but a capacity charge is generally when somebody connects to a system that others have already paid for. And the capacity charge is collected to, in essence, to not only pay for the costs of building that existing system, but also to offset any future improvements to that system as a result of more users being added to the system. So, but a developer agreement is specific to, if you want to think about a subdivision where they have to build and install the entire system as a new separate delivery or collection system, delivery being water, sewer being collection. And they fund that through that developer agreement. And if it's necessary that where that subdivision uses up existing capacity, say there's a trunk line in the area, but that trunk line is not adequate to serve the new development, well, then the developer may have to increase the capacity of that trunk line. If it has sufficient capacity, maybe they'll just pay a capacity fee to connect to that trunk line. It's very site specific, very, very site specific. And there isn't a universal explanation that applies to all the circumstances. But I hope that at least provides some light to you. Yeah.
If I may, I'm hearing Director Murphy just ask this question about surcharge and about complexity of the system, and is there an opportunity to have an additional surcharge, if I heard you correctly. And so the capacity fee is a one-time charge, as Jesse and Steve have explained. But I think to your question, the rates are intended to fund the ongoing operation and maintenance of whatever system. It could be very complex. It could be another separate pumping system. The rates that the district have set are pretty much universal throughout our entire service area. So we've spread those costs out. There can be opportunities to put surcharges, but that's kind of not the normal for us, because if you were to go down that road and analyze our entire system by individual little area on O&M costs, it would be incredibly complex to look at allocating those rate costs and applying surcharges. So in the sense of the development agreements that will come before the board, what we've really been trying to do is establish the capacity charge for the developer, or that they build the infrastructure. And then once they connect to the system, they'll fall under the rate structure that the district has for the ongoing O&M expenditures for whatever pump system or tank system, distribution system that they have with their development. Hopefully I didn't make it more confusing.
So on that, then are we as TUD choosy about what we accept from these? Because we don't have to, like just because somebody builds, if they build it in a way that's going to be expensive to the district, does the district, then the district could just say, you guys maintain it, that's good, we don't need it. And will you attach at this, you get the water from here, this is your capacity charge, and you take care of your, how you're going to distribute it?
And this is part of a bigger conversation, but we absolutely are choosy. We absolutely are watching out for the ratepayers. When they come to us in preliminary design, we tell them how basically we have standards and we have different types of architecture of the system that we feel will achieve a better economy of scale or a better efficiency. In addition, we have opportunities like shopping centers where we master meter. Like if a new shopping center were to come in, I would look to master meter that, which means we would establish a metered connection right outside the boundary of the shopping center, and everything inside's on you, and so we do look at, same with apartment complexes and those kinds of things. So we do try to minimize the impact to ratepayers, but you know, when you're adding infrastructure, you're always looking at economy of scale and efficiency, and in a rural environment, it can be difficult. But our goal is to provide service if it meets our standards and to appropriately allocate the costs, either through capacity and through the ongoing rate collection of rates.
Okay, but basically, if someone wants to add in something that's going to be expensive to the system out of the basically, in thinking about it from the capacity charges thing, right? If we just keep taking on more and more chunks of the system, you know, the more we have to maintain, the more money we need to make sure that we have for maintaining that stuff. And so if we have a very efficient system, you know, then you could probably know what's happening. We have a very complicated system, and it seems like adding more complications to it. My understanding of the capacity charges is that when you pay to connect to the system, you're paying your part of the existing system that distributes water to your residence or business or farm or whatever. And that then TUD needs to be very careful that we're not taking on more assets into the system. It seems like from looking at the system, we are there's a lot of maintenance stuff we wish we didn't have to do. I mean, you know, there's a lot of pieces of the thing that are 150 years old or 100 years old or 50 years old, where the decisions that were made at that time are a costly part of our system for maintaining. And I'm just, as we're looking forward, when I think of capacity charges, the capacity charge for connecting in is going to be in the future related to the cost of the system. And so that's how this all plays together in my mind. So thank you for helping answer some of those questions.
And I think I'll just tag in real quick before I call Director Boatwright and Kearns. You know, Director Murphy, you're articulating something very important. And the one thing I don't think got really addressed is that when we talk about surcharges or we talk about bringing something in, you know, the surcharges are a result of a system that either we were forced to take over or we took over because they failed and we're a good neighbor, or some other reason. It's not like we're actively out there trying to buy these systems that aren't connected, that are very difficult to maintain, but we got loaded up with them. We just did. And the idea with the surcharge is, what does it take to bring your system up to our standards? You know, so here's this outside system, and that's how we're going to cover those additional costs, hopefully, for this very complicated system or anything else. So that's the time we're looking at our standards. How do we bring it in? How are we going to place that? To me, capacity charges are never going to be enough to fund operation and maintenance. They're just, you can't make them that high in this area. And we're going to have to really look at capacity fee as a one-time fee to add this additional capacity. And so the challenge is just like you said, how can you be efficient? How can you still have value, you know, keep our rates reasonable and affordable with doing that? But I wanted to point out the surcharges side of it really is bringing somebody to our standards. So with that, Director Boatwright, thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. Director Murphy.
I thought this was going to be easy, honest, guys. Good questions, though.
I thought Director Murphy had some very good questions, and hopefully that, you know, some of it got cleared up for her. My questions actually start on page 3 of 5, Steve,
Okay.
where the total line below where it mixes both water and sewer.
Yep.
Should that just not be eliminated off of this sheet and just go with a tally out to the end? It seems to me like adding the 69,000 for water treatment to the treatment reclamations tally down there at the bottom, that to me, that added some confusion to the sheet, for
Well, I can,
how
my response to that would be, this format you're seeing here, and that's why I'm specifically quoting the code section. 66013 wants to see the total you've collected, how much is going across. So I understand what you're saying about us mixing water and sewer, but for TUD to comply with code section 66013, I could put a subtotal in there if that would help, but we're interested in what is our total capacity fees. And on page 3, that's what that table's intended to present.
All right, then, okay, if it's code compliance, that's fine. It just, yes, there shouldn't have been a separation there, but no, that's fine, as long as that, is what we're doing to comply with the regulations.
And it's consistent from year to year too, so.
Yeah, that, so as we look at that, dropping down to page 5 of 5, or 5 of 5. Now we've got multiple projects there, just, Ridgewood transmission line, to consolidate SV and BLP. The funds there, that are listed for the project far outweigh what we've done under the, capacities, collection on capacity fees. Can you explain the difference, or where the extra funding to fund these projects come from?
Yeah, and again, that's, exactly what they're asking for is, what projects did you build and fund, and how were they funded? So if you were to look at the page before, we're showing essentially $2.5 million of completed projects for fiscal 21. And we had a total of $448,000 of capacity charges that we had available. So where does the other revenues come from? The other revenue represents the amount not funded by capacity charges, which is made up of grants, user charges, and/or district reserves. Then if you to go to page 5, they specifically are asking, what are you planning on building for next year? They don't really care whether it's out of capacity or not, but like I said, all entities, capacity charges are not going to be sufficient to cover the cost of these projects. We have to have these other sources. So what you see on page 5 is actually the board adopted CIP budget for next year, excluding things like trucks and specific equipment, because those aren't eligible for capacity fees. So you are absolutely correct. We have a budget of $5 million in water and a budget of $7 million in sewer. And if you look at the page 3, we have a total of $799,000 capacity fees. So we will build far in excess of what our capacity fees. And really what they're looking at is, are you spending the capacity fees that you've collected? Clearly we are.
Okay, and then final question would be, do we spend all of our capacity fees collected in the previous year in the next year's budget? So that basically everything goes down to 0 each year? Or,
well, as far as you have to carry over capacity fees that aren't spent. So for instance, on page 3, you'll see under water, we have 61,000 in supply. So, we didn't have enough spent specifically on supply. Now, if you were to look at storage or treatment or something, not treatment, but storage, we build one tank and that's far in excess of what we have here. So we do not, as it says underneath there, we do not carry forward deficit balances. So it's always going to be zeroed out there, but we're required to provide any carryover plus funds we collect each year on a year-to-year basis. And that's what this report's showing.
all right, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Director Kearns.
Yeah, Steve, thank you. Eric Johnson, he kind of stole my thunder there. That was a good job, Eric, about building in the rates, for when these new subdivisions or acquisition of existing systems come online. And the other side of that I'd like to just make a little statement on is that, when we're adding ratepayers to our system, I mean, that, in my opinion, that helps out a lot of different things. For instance, the PG&E acquisition, the ongoing maintenance on that, it helps spread that cost out a little bit more. I live here in Curtis Creek, and that's a system that's been thrown around a lot this morning. We pay some of the highest water bills in TUD, maybe the highest water bills once you figure the surcharge on there. And I'm happy to do it because I remember the days before we were TUD, and it wasn't fun out here. We ran out of water, we had poor quality, and TUD rescued us, took care of that. And yes, our rates are high, but yes, we have dependable, good tasting, potable water out here. So, and also, I don't know how many customers came with the Matt Dillon system, but if it was 100 or 200 or whatever it was, that's 100 or 200 more ratepayers to spread these costs over some of these long-term projects that we've got coming up here. And I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. President Balin.
Thank you. This is, I really commend staff over time when we've received systems to really look at future capacity enhancements and make it as fair as possible. It's not easy to do. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I have two questions. One is on page 5 of 5, the Shaw's Flat Ditch Pedro Y utility relocation. I understand that Caltrans, or that there is a grant involved. When there's a project like this, I'm not singling this out as a good example, where we don't have a need to relocate these utilities, but they need to be relocated. Do we get reimbursed, let's say, through this Caltrans project, or is this 60,000 something that we have to do because of their project?
Eric? I can try to respond, Director Balin. It depends. Again, some programs where the agency or the relocation is eligible, we have been able to cover our costs through another agency's grant. For instance, the Mona Way widening, if you remember that a few years ago, the city and the county were jointly involved in that, and they covered most of our relocation expenses. In this particular case, the funding is short. The county went out to bid on this. There wasn't enough funding, and the grant doesn't include our utility relocation as an eligible expense. So unfortunately, this is a good example of an unfortunate circumstance where our ratepayers are going to have to fund something that we really didn't need to do, or we wouldn't have initiated this on our own. So we do try to work with the county to have them incorporate our utility relocation in their funding sources. Another example will be they plan to widen Tuolumne Road just down the road from here, and we have a sewer line that's going to have to be relocated. Again, we wouldn't have proceeded with that project on our own. It doesn't need to be replaced. And so we've asked them to try, when they make application, to go ahead and include that in their funding packages. It sometimes happens, it sometimes doesn't.
Oh, thank you, Eric. And then that just brings up my last comment, and that is it was a few years ago, we had an ad hoc committee, TUD, to work on the fact that land use and water allocation really do go hand in hand. And our ad hoc group came up with some recommendations for the general plan revisions or update so that it would make TUDs, it would essentially take the TUD ratepayer into consideration. For an example, I think one of the things that we talked about is, and these are the sort of the soft impacts onto the ratepayer. One of them is the condition of Phoenix Lake, the water quality, because of septics in the surrounding neighborhood. And so that was, I think, one of the first times that TUD said, well, you know what, we really need to preempt some of these things that cost the ratepayer money county by making recommendations for sound land use management planning that helps our watershed, in recognition that we all live in this watershed. And so these are these things, the dredging and the grant money, of course, that we got for this, and that we are indirectly affected by land use planning decisions. And those are something that I was very proud of us, even though the county didn't take our recommendations. At least we're out there advocating for any future savings or impacts that we may incur, that TUD may incur by decisions, land use planning decisions that directly affect or indirectly our water. So these are soft impacts, but I think staff again does a great job looking at where it's obvious that we can try to factor in the capacity enhancement costs, even though we are adding more customers to our system. That was just my comment. I see Director Ringen has his hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, excuse me, want to make a comment to about Director Murphy's concerns. And I brought this up at the time it came before the board and asked if the project was going to cost TUD ratepayers any money, and I was told flat out no. And I am specifically talking about Valley Vista development. And to your point, what's going to happen is, yes, for the sewer system, Valley Vista, the developer is going to build the infrastructure down there, which will consist of a pump station. However, and also the pipeline to send it uphill to the Mill Villa pump station, where it then will go to the regional wastewater plant. So what this has done is, yeah, that's all fine and good. They're going to put in that infrastructure down there. But even though the Mill Villa pump station was in need of some work, it now has to be enlarged in order to handle the capacity from that development. And when it's all done and said and done, the TUD ratepayer gets to pay the electricity in it forever for those two pump stations. So I don't know, that's really been stuck in my craw.
Are there any additional directors' comments, questions, and concerns for Steve? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Corey, is there any public comment?
Not that I'm seeing, no.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll close off the public comment and bring it back to the board for, I believe we need the recommendation is for the board to accept and file this report. Is there a motion?
Guess I'll make that motion.
I would second that.
Okay, Director Boatright seconds it. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Raylan,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And
Thank
again,
you all.
thank you, Steve. And Steve, could you please give us the exact water rules and regs for any board member that would like to go and actually look at the regulations for how we calculate the capacity?
Yeah, it's right on the website. If you go on the website under water or sewer rates, and the link will be right there.
Okay.
I can email the link to all the directors if you like.
And it's one of our rules and regulations, correct?
The capacity fees are an integral part of the rules and regulations, and there's a separate appendix showing how they're calculated.
That's what I wanted. Okay, so and that's on the website. That
Correct.
appendices. Okay, appendix. Thank you. Okay. Well, moving on to the next item, Melissa, will you please read item number 6?
Okay, adopt resolution declaring October 2nd to October 10th, 2021 to be Water Professionals Appreciation Week.
Good morning again, President Balin, Vice President Ringen, members of the board and staff and members of the public. I'm happy to bring this item forward as way of background. This Water Professionals Appreciation Week was established back in 2017 through a Senate concurrent resolution, just to really formally raise awareness for water professionals in California and to formally show appreciation for the agency's staff. So in California, the labor estimates are that there are about 60,000 water professionals in California, and about 6,000 are needed each year due to turnover. And that's no different here at TUD. We have had, nearly 50 retirements since 2010. So we're constantly looking for good quality folks to bring into TUD and serve the community that we all love so much. So particularly here at TUD, we have water professionals in water and wastewater treatment, distribution, collections, engineering, finance, administration, communications. We have Jesse on for water law there. And there's many more of these types of occupations that folks in high demand areas and high demand occupations can find a good solid career in the water industry. And we understand that water is is essential, if not the only thing that is really essential in a community for it to thrive. So here specifically at TUD, we have currently 77 employees who you'll hear more you've already heard how complex our systems are. We've talked about that. So these 77 individuals here at TUD are dedicated and work hard every day, 24/7, 365, to ensure that we provide these essential services to the community. Even especially during now, I believe it's been 18, 19 months during this pandemic. So we provided continuous service, and we're really proud of our staff for the dedication that they consistently show the community. So we really appreciate it. It does take each and every employee here at the district to fulfill our mission. So it's a real honor to work with each and every one of them. The majority of our staff are ones you don't see. You see us, but they're the ones that really make us look good and really do some really hard, important work in the community. So if I may, I would like to read the resolution to formally express appreciation to our staff here. The resolution reads, so this is a resolution of the Board of Directors of Tuolumne Utilities District declaring Water Professionals Appreciation Week, which will be next week, the first week in October, October 2nd through October 10th. And the resolution reads, whereas water is the lifeblood of California, and without safe and reliable water, no community and no sector of the economy, from high-tech to manufacturing to agriculture, can thrive or expand. And thanks to technological advances by highly skilled and trained water professionals and the dedication of thousands of industry professionals in the state, California drinking water and treated wastewater meets some of the most stringent water quality standards in the nation. And depending on where you live in California, your water may come from a nearby well or river, or it may travel hundreds of miles through canals or pipelines to reach your tap. Regardless of where it originates, your drinking water is filtered, cleaned, tested, and distributed in a process carefully managed by trained water professionals. And California is steadily expanding the reuse of treated wastewater and pioneering the use of advanced purification, recycled water to replenish aquifers, prevent seawater intrusion, and improve local water supply reliability. And water professionals at local public water and wastewater agencies work 24/7 to plan for the future, maintain and update their systems, and improve the safety and resiliency of local water supplies for their communities. And according to the Public Policy Institute of California, local public water and wastewater agencies invest more than $25 billion a year on local water-related programs and projects that protect public health and the environment, improve local water supply reliability, replenish and clean up groundwater basins, provide water for fire protection, and protect against floods. And thousands of water, wastewater, and recycled water industry professionals in the state dedicated their careers to keeping drinking water, recycled water, and treated wastewater safe and reliable for the use of Californians. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Tuolumne Utilities District hereby declares October 2nd through 10th, 2021, Water Professionals Appreciation Week, and extends its sincere gratitude and appreciation to the water and wastewater professionals who work 24/7 to provide excellent essential service to our community every day, even through a pandemic. So it would be my pleasure to pass it over to the board to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Abby. And this is next week, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Good to know it didn't already happen. Or something. This is good. All
Yes,
right.
and we will be, assuming the board will pass the resolution, we'll advertise on our social media and website just to put the word out to gain awareness and acknowledge our water professionals.
That's great. Good. Okay, thank you. Yes, Director Murphy.
As always, some clarification. First, I think this is fantastic. I really think, especially in this drought year where it's been incredibly kind of fingernails biting this year with making sure that we are between the snow pushing on the ditches in the winter and the drought this summer. So I think this is great. But I'm curious on the 2017, this was established, and it looks like it's for the whole state, right? When we're approving this, which I'm sure we will, I think it's great to honor everybody in the state, or is this specifically to honor the folks in our county or the mountain communities area or the state, or just in the wording of it, I'm not exactly sure who all we're honoring, and it's great. Whichever way is great. Everybody deserves accolades this year. It's a tough job, and it's folks have been doing an amazing job at it. But I just wanted to clarify that. And then the other question I had, you just answered a second ago, is like, how are we going to celebrate this kind of? So, Abby?
Yeah, so it really is established for California and water professionals throughout California, but then, so that's where you see a couple of things in the resolution that may not necessarily apply here locally at TUD with, seawater and those kinds of things. However, it also specifically towards the end of the resolution specifically recognizes the water professionals here at TUD.
Okay, so it's all
yes,
levels.
All of the above.
Very good. And on the specifically what you guys are going to do as staff or as the HR and outreach, as far as what you're going to put out in the community, will that be specifically honoring local, or will that be more general as well?
Specifically, it will be more local. We use some photos that we've taken of staff that will be on some graphics that acknowledge, say thank you, water professionals and TUD employees, and they'll have some graphics that are local, specifically of our staff that have agreed to that, and will specifically be honoring our TUD employees in those kinds of advertisements.
Okay, and also the other water professionals out there within our county.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from directors? Okay, seeing oh, Director Boatright, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to, kind of start the ball rolling there by saying thanks to all our crew. Great to, have the resolution for recognizing the Water Week, but, just thank you to all the staff that works there. But there's a hard job done every day of the week, every day of the year. Thank you very much for, keeping it all going where it needs to.
Thank you, Director Boatright. That's really well said. I think that echoes the board sentiments. This is part of the valuing of water, is valuing how it gets delivered to us and every place in between. So thank you for those comments. Okay, Corey, is there any comments from our public?
Not that I see, no.
Okay. Then I will close off the public comments, and we will vote as a board. And the motion would be to adopt the resolution. So is there a motion?
I would make that motion to adopt this resolution, declaring October 2nd to October 10th, Water Professionals Appreciation Week.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Melissa, will you please, any further discussion? Saying none. Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay. Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kern,
Aye.
Director Murphy.
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And thank you, Abby. That was a great presentation. And I guess we'll be celebrating statewide next week. Very good. Okay, so that brings us to item number 7. And who would like to take that? Oh, Melissa, would you please read item number 7?
Okay. Operational update on the water and wastewater departments for August 2021.
Well, good morning. This is Don Burton, your interim general manager. Before I let others take over here, Rich, I wanted to make sure I took the time to introduce Rich properly. I don't know if I did that before, but back in June, I tasked Rich with this job of taking over this for me, the administration of this ops report. And he works closely with all the other superintendents and Lisa to gather the pertinent information and attach it to this report. And then, so just for some of you, you may not know that before 2015, in my time as the operations manager, this report didn't exist. It didn't go to the board in this fashion. And so anyway, I'm really proud of this report, and I'm happy that Rich has been able to take over for me. So Rich, take it away, would you please?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Obviously, it's Rich Pitcher, your collections superintendent. Had a really busy month, got a lot of things done, a lot of projects completed, a lot of other tasks that have kept us real busy. So I just like to touch on a few topics and then open up everything for discussion. On page 4, I'd like to, on the water operations report, I'd like to point out the surface water plants demand, especially if you look at from last year to this year, that bottom line and first 2 columns, it's been reduced about 7.5 million gallons, which is approximately 10%, which is a pretty significant reduction. And then that last column to the right, from starting 2013 to this current year, there's been a reduction in 113 acre feet, which is a 17% reduction, which is really significant. And to me, because of this, I'd like to give a shout out to our consumers and customers, because this is a direct relation to them using water more responsibly. So I think that's a huge deal. So thank you, all the customers. On page 10, you'll see the construction crews installing a new PRV for the Cedar Springs tank project. This is a really good project. That tank is one of the worst, if not the worst tank in our system. I believe Director Ringen has been to that site, so he can attest to the condition of that tank. This PRV being installed will allow us to bypass that tank and supply the correct pressure downstream, so we can work on replacing that tank while it's being demoed. So like I said, that's a really good project. So that was really brief. I know you guys still have a while to go for your meetings. So do you guys have any questions pertaining to the report that I can answer for you? Anybody?
Yeah, we have Director Murphy and Director Boatwright with their hands up, so we'll start with Director Murphy first.
Do we have a general report on how things are going with the reservoirs?
As far as like Lions and Pinecrest and all that, their levels. Yeah, so
And Quartz.
And Quartz. So I can definitely take the Quartz question. So this morning Quartz is around 17 feet. So that's about 10% of capacity. And as far as getting waters to the ranchers, you know, the wastewater operators and stuff are doing a really good job moving water around, trying to keep them in water until October 15th, and at least until October 15th. And I think that's a real goal that we should be able to achieve. They're working real hard on that.
And is some of that water coming from, I know that Don had mentioned, or maybe it was Eric had mentioned before, that we have some wells that sometimes we are utilizing that aren't good for drinking water, but work for the adding to the wastewater system?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what we call a racetrack well, which is currently running about 77 GPM, and that's on a timer. So it's running for a total of like 12 hours a day. We have our Country Estates well that is running at approximately 37 gallons per minute, and that's also running, it's on a timer running about 12 hours a day. We have our Greenlee plant. There's a standpipe up there that we're flowing water through that. The last I checked was 100 gallons a minute, and that's running 24/7. And then I'm not sure the exact number, but the Scenic Brook tank, Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I think that's running like 30 gallons a minute. So, and then our Twain Hart wastewater plant, we're also letting around 100 gallons a minute flow directly through there down to regional. So there's a few ways we're trying to get water out there and keep it flowing. So.
And that's mainly for the benefit of the downstream agricultural users.
Yeah, I mean, it's a benefit for all the users out there, but yes, the downstream users are getting the biggest benefit out of that, correct?
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
And without that, without those additional water, the wastewater, just the general wastewater coming into the Quartz reservoir wouldn't be enough to, wouldn't have been enough this year to meet their needs.
Absolutely. I am, Don a while ago said, I think we're going to make it to October 15th. And I would have said, no way we're making it that long. Yeah, so absolutely. We would have run out of water in Quartz a long time ago. So like I said, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work trying to get water down there. So, so I'm not sure if any other questions on Quartz.
No, and then just my other question was just on the, I know that the water into Lyons comes from Pinecrest, and so that there's a, there's a little bit of magic that happens there too, to make sure that we're at optimal levels for taste and smell of our water. And so just maybe a little bit on how you guys are managing Pinecrest and Lyons and Phoenix as far as the water levels.
Yeah, so for that one, Eric, do you want to take that one or?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
So we're looking good water levels wise. Strawberry's at 13,194 acre feet. It is obviously going down. We're bringing water into Lyons. So Lyons storage is going up. Yesterday it was at 1,335 acre feet. So we'll be close to 2,000 after next week's ditch outage there at Lyons. So we're going to be very happy about that. All of our other reservoirs right now are full because of ditch outage next week. So everything's looking good right now. We're just waiting on weather.
Thank you.
Here we have Director Boatwright with comment.
Yeah, Eric, you still on the line there? Eric Hall.
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if the information would be available going back several years on like individual month capacities alliance. Specifically the August month that we're looking at right now, where we're at 19% capacity. And I realize this year was the one. This is a year that's been the worst. Throughout the history of the system up there, but just a chart that would show that this system seems to be on the diminishing side between environmental demands for in-stream flows and increased population served from this. But with climate change and the way things are going, it might be nice to be able to see this over a long-term period for, like this specific month of August timeframe.
Yeah, Glenn has multiple spreadsheets on all of this.
So that, I think would, kind of show that we really need to be paying attention to storage and capacity below Lyons that, can be filled before end of spill takes place, and hold our capacities as high on the mountain as possible and everything as full as possible. So
that's what we do when we're in spill periods. That we try and move as much water all over the system to fill everything that we have, as far as raw water customers' ponds, our ponds, Phoenix Lake, anything like that.
Is there any way to encourage, encourage more storage from the agricultural users at that time? So we don't have to do so much well pumping at this time?
I think, well, clearly Director Boatwright has a finite answer to that, but in general, yes, they're full at the end. At the beginning of reclamation season, all of the ponds, even the reclamation user ponds, are all full.
That, at the end of the reclamation or at the beginning, the reclamation side is a whole lot different than our Lyons reservoir, Strawberry Pinecrest kind of situation. Eventually, okay, let me go with, there are separate details that need to be looked at for both ends of that. But where I'm mainly concerned with looking at page 3 and the 19%, our raw water storage for potable water treatment, the system seems to be breaking, and it's going to be one of these things that happens slowly over time. So I'm recommending that, we keep an eye on it to, because if we continue with another drought year, are we going to be down to 17% next year? Maybe the year following, we wouldn't drop that low, but maybe then we hit another 3 years of drought period where, we struggle there. But so just like to see us keeping an eye on that high raw water storage that goes into our potable water treatment plants. The reclamation system, that operation, that has some other details that should be looked at as well too. But I'll turn it over to Ron. He's got his.
Go ahead, Director Ringen.
Director Ringen.
Okay, I've got a couple of 3 questions here. The first 2, I believe, are for Eric Paul, but I don't know that for a fact. That underwater drone intrigues me. I see from the pictures that it's tethered. That could be a challenge in debris, if there was debris or something underwater, but I imagine that the operator can see where it's going, what it's doing, and all that. And then the other part to that question is, what propels that thing?
Yeah, Director Ringen, this is Trevor Cowden. So it does have a tether. We've got to be very careful in places where we have debris in a raw water reservoir. You could see debris at the bottom, but there is propulsion. It's vertical, it's horizontal, with a couple different impellers on it. So it can go up and down vertically with one center propeller, and then right and left propellers that can go back, forth. It's very mobile. There are pretty neat videos on it online that can show you that in action.
That sounds cool. I don't know what that little gem costs, but I think it was a good investment, because if you can keep the divers out of the tanks and let this little monster do the work, makes a lot of sense to me.
I'll just state it should be very useful. It can be used in a variety of subsurface functions and tasks, including video inspections. It has cloud retrieval, water sampling that you see there in the pic that we're able to take there in the reservoir. Temperature measurements, GPS heading, all in real time with video. So should prove very useful, especially in those storage facilities that are unsafe to enter by qualified divers.
That's just great. Okay, and then my final question is, with the crews being so busy this year, I haven't heard anything about the connection line between Twain Harte, the sewer line I'm talking about, and that goes down Phoenix Lake and all that. Has the work on that sort of ended for right now until everybody can catch their breath, or is there still some projects going on with that?
Yeah, Director Ringen, it's just kind of like you said, with everybody being so busy, we just we have not had the time and opportunity to get out there and do some more sections, but by no means have we stopped that project. When we get some, week or so, then we'll go out there and do a section and just keep moving forward. But yeah, the goal is to get all those sections cleaned and video inspected.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Corey, are there any questions from the public?
Not that I'm seeing, no.
Okay, thank you. Great report, good questions. I think this is a review item, and so I think it's a value that it's on our regular agenda because interesting topics come up and it gives the board a fuller picture of TUD. So with that, we will move into, I believe, let's see, where are we? Staff reports.
Actually, President Bailey, we still have item number 8.
You are absolutely right, and that is Abby's bailiwick.
Okay,
Melissa,
item number 8.
oh, go ahead.
Discussion and decision whether to resume in-person board and committee meetings or continue virtual meetings during the present public health emergency.
Thank you and good morning again. Abby Parkon. Today, this item is something we have discussed a couple of times in the last several months. And by way of recap, the TUD boardroom as well as the TUD offices have been closed to the public, and the board meetings have been held virtually since March of 2020 in accordance with some government executive orders, N2920 and N3520 due to COVID-19. And so current, most recently, back in June 11th of 2021, the governor signed another executive order, N821, that to begin requiring districts to provide physical in-person meetings by September 30th, 2021. Basically, the authorizations under the previous executive orders are expiring September 30th. So this is the meeting that is the time for the board to discuss and make a decision on and how they'd like to go. Most recently, though, we were waiting for some information, and most recently on September 16th, 2021, AB 361 was signed into law, which amends the Brown Act and allows legislative bodies to continue meeting virtually during a proclaimed state of emergency, amending the Government Code 54953 in a few situations. One is that the state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing. 2, the purpose of the meeting is to determine whether, as a result of an emergency meeting in person, would present imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees, or the legislative body has already determined that as a result of the emergency meeting in person would present imminent risk to health or safety of attendees. So in those circumstances, if those apply, then the proposed new government section provides an exemption from the Brown Act's existing requirements and creates alternate measures to protect statutory and constitutional rights of the public to appear before local legislative bodies. So specifically, the newly proposed section 52953E exempts TUD and other agencies from complying with the following: that they must ensure that each teleconference location is physically accessible to the public, maintaining a quorum with members physically within the jurisdiction, and providing an opportunity for public comment at each teleconference location. So that is what the amended government code exempts, should the other provisions apply with the local agency. So also there's some requirements on the virtual meetings and how to make them publicly accessible and to ensure that we're doing that. So we have been currently doing that with the way we're handling our virtual meetings. Corey Adams has been doing an excellent job to ensure that we provide all access to the public and that we're making those available. It is important to note that in the event of an ongoing proclaimed emergency, state of emergency, in order to continue to meet virtually, the board would no later than 30 days after the first virtual meeting under AB 361, and every 30 days thereafter the board must make findings that by majority vote on the circumstances of the applicable state of emergency and find one of two things: either that the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of its members to safely meet in person, or that the state or local officials continue to impose or recommend social distancing measures. This Brown Act teleconferencing exemption rule does have a sunset of January 1st, 2024. So with that, now I would like to open it back up to the board for any questions about what I just presented, and to discuss and decide whether or not to resume in-person meetings or continue to conduct remote or virtual meetings under AB 361. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Director Murphy has her hand up for comment.
And you're on mute.
Can you tell me if I'm correct that in the last 2 weeks, we've had 5 new COVID deaths? 2 more were reported yesterday.
I saw the 2 yesterday. I don't have the tally in the last 2 weeks.
I believe that in the last 2, just in the last 2 weeks, it's either, it may be slightly more than the last 2 weeks, but what has been being reported very recently is we've had 5 new deaths. The youngest, I believe, was 33. I think the oldest was 70. So it's not it's hitting a lot of spectrums. The other thing I'm very aware of what's going on in the schools. And so the requirement for social distancing is there. The requirement for masks is there. Out of my 26 students on any, some of the days they've all actually been able to be there, but for the most part, I've had out of 26 students, I think on the class that I had the other day, I had six out, and I've had one student who's been out for a month now with COVID. So I think just looking at what's going on in our county, I think I think this is the most deaths. I think that what I saw in the newspaper the other day was that it's the most deaths that has been experienced in this county in this period of time since the beginning of the pandemic. So it seems like we can definitely understand why precautions would still be necessary in this time and place.
Director Ringen has his hand up for a comment.
Yeah, I have been watching those numbers real close, and I think you have pretty accurate numbers that you just presented as far as the general public. It's actually alarming to me, and the fact that there's such a pushback here in this county, in Calaveras County, to get vaccinated is also a concern. And what really bothers me is that being fully vaccinated is no guarantee that you're gonna not be exposed to that damn Delta thing and get taken out that way. And if you're a high at risk person, such as me, this is, well, I know it's changed my lifestyle tremendously. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. It's just very, very concerning to me.
Director Murphy has her hand back up again.
Just one more piece on that is just from personal experience on, being in the classroom, being the mask police is no fun. And so I think in this county specifically, maybe the whole state, maybe the whole country, having a mask mandate does not mean people will wear their masks properly. And so I think that's another piece that someone would have to be appointed to be escorting people out if they cannot wear their masks properly within the space. It just, there's a lot of rigum that goes with trying to stay with the things that could help people be safe in an indoor setting. Clearly I'm on the side of, I think we should keep this accessible to all over the platform we've been using that's been very successful.
We have Director Boatright and then Director Balin.
I really like the format that we're currently doing. It's excellent from the pandemic standpoint that, we're not all in the same space and all that. Certainly agree with Director Murphy that asking people to put a mask back on or put it on properly is not going to be a fun job. May have to mention it multiple times. But I do have a question. Is this, we are basically just exempting the board from in-person, the component that we're agreeing to basically continues to exempt the board members from the in-person meeting. Public is still able to call in and teleconference as they desire.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're required to support that format, but all right.
Yes, in essence, we would, if continuing the remote meetings, we would be required to maintain the open setting and have people be able to call in, whether they join via Zoom or whether they call in and be able to make public comments,
Okay.
just like we're doing now.
And do we have to make this resolution on a monthly basis? Is that what I heard in
Yes, after the initial resolution, which I did put, I didn't mention that, but I put 2 sample resolutions in your board packet. One would be an initial one that needs to be adopted by majority vote within 30 days of starting remote meetings under AB 361. So basically at either the first or second meeting in October, no later than, for the initial resolution, and then every 30 days thereafter if we continue to renew and meet remotely.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We have Director Balin and then Director Murphy again.
Yeah, thank you, David. Those were similar questions. So what I understand is that we can continue. We have the authority in the AB 361 to continue, as we are doing, virtually allowing the public to participate as well. And so this gives us the authority just to continue until, was it
2024?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So that, yeah, okay. Thank you.
It might be helpful if I could share, the board does not, it's not necessary for the board to adopt this resolution during this meeting. The point of Abby putting this on the agenda was for the board to discuss whether or not it would like to continue the ability to use remote meetings for the board members. And if that is the case, if we get a clear direction from the board, Abby will prepare the resolution, fill in the blanks, remove the highlighting, and make it apply. And the board would have to adopt that resolution during, it could be during any of the October meetings. And then every 30 days after that, the board would have to re-adopt the resolution for each 30 days it wishes to continue to use the remote in option or the remote in exemption under the Brown Act. So it would start in October and it would have to be adopted each month after that.
Director Murphy?
Is the 30 day, the every 30-day thing a state mandate, or is that something that was written in by TUD?
That is a state mandate.
Okay,
in
thanks.
the law.
Any other comments? Oh, Director Boatright, sorry.
Could the 30-day update be put under the consent calendar?
Jesse?
The board has to make specific findings. I think probably so. And then as long as a member of the board then would have the opportunity to pull it for the discussion, of course, yes, that would be fine.
All right, thank you.
Steve has his hand up for a comment.
Oh, just a quick question I had listening to you all. Normally in October or November and December, we only have the first meeting because of the holidays. So if we go to this 30-day thing and we don't adopt it until October 22nd, would we have to adopt it on the first meeting? Or if we don't have a meeting, we could adopt it after?
The law is not that specific.
Yeah.
My suggestion, Steve, is that if the board provides Abby and staff clear direction that it would like to continue the remote in exemption under the Brown Act, that this resolution would be finalized and put on the first meeting for October. And then the board could adopt it the first meeting in November, first meeting in December, and subsequent months as necessary.
Director Murphy has her hand up.
Yeah, is there a reason why we wouldn't just adopt it today?
We don't have it filled out, Director Murphy. Well, yes. We are actually still operating under the governor's executive order that exempts this provision from the Brown Act. And the new legislation states that it occurs after the first meeting at which the remote in option is used. So we're actually operating under one law, but as of October 1, we'll be operating under AB 361. So yes, it should wait for adoption until the first or second meeting, whatever meeting the board wants in October. It should wait. It should not be adopted at this meeting.
So at this meeting, just clarify for me what action we need to take.
We're looking for direction from the board that it would like to have this, that the board would like to continue to remote in, and that will result in Abby and or me finalizing this resolution, putting it on the agenda for actual adoption during the October meeting.
And I know Jeff is still going to talk, but my other question is like, how do we move on to that after Jeff talks? How do we move on to, is it a motion? Is it?
General consensus is fine.
And that we get the general consensus how?
Well, it's clear from listening to you that you would be in favor of it, Director Ringen, as well as Director Boatright. There's three right there. And I don't know how Director Kearns feels, but we'll hear from him in a moment.
Okay, so it's just as simple as that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse, I just had a question on your explanation there about how we're under one law now and then another law in October. So looking at the calendar, our next meeting would be October the 12th. So since we will be under that law on October the 12th, and we haven't adopted the resolution, does that mean we have to meet in person on October the 12th, or am I splitting hairs?
No, it does not. You know, the way this law was written is the board is allowed to have the first meeting, to remote into the first meeting, as long as certain conditions are met. Those conditions will be met. in the first meeting of October. But if you wish to remote in continually, then every 30 days you have to readopt the resolution. This law, and they had to write it this way. It may seem a bit odd, but they had to write it in. They had to write it this way because the law wasn't. I forget the precise day, but for example, I have some clients who met the first week of September, and they only meet the one time per month, and the bill was signed after their meeting. So what are we supposed to do? So you have to have the first meeting in October remoted in, and then the board of that local agency or district, whatever it is, can then make a decision at that first meeting whether or not they wish to continue to remote in. That's the way the law is written. It may seem clunky, but when you understand the complexities of how different local agencies meet, you understand the reason why they did that.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. And just for the record too, I'm in agreement with Director Boatwright that once we do adopt it, I'd be happy to see it on the consent calendar as well.
Any other comments from directors? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to comment?
We have Barbara Dressler with her hand up for a comment.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just to say that remoting in works for me as an over 65, and I think for a lot of people in my age group. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Jesse, excuse me, Corey, any other comments from the public?
Not that's being indicated, no.
Okay. It seems to me that the board is clearly leaning towards a consensus, and so I feel okay to call for a motion to continue remote virtual meetings. I think that's a pretty safe motion. Would any director like to make that motion?
President Balin, all we really need is it looks like the board would like to have this put on the future agenda for adoption, for the October agenda for adoption, and that's all we need at this point. No motion is necessary. It won't be on the consent calendar the very first time. It will be a discussion item the very first time in October, and then each subsequent month it can be on the consent calendar, but the very first time it'll be a discussion item, and that's all we need. Abby, do you need any additional information? I think we got clear direction from the board. Yep.
Yes, except for the fact that the board must make a finding of one or two reasons to conduct the meetings remotely. One is that it would be conditions causing imminent risk to attendees, or imposition or recommendation of social distancing measures. So the way I read it, and I believe that the way you read it as well, Jesse, is that we would want the board to let us know which finding that they would like to cite in the resolution for meeting remotely.
Yeah, my suggestion, Abby, is as we discussed, since Cal OSHA still has recommendations for social distancing and TV has numerous employees, I think that is my suggestion, is that the board utilize the recommendation for social distancing from Cal OSHA. It's a regulatory body, a state regulatory body, and that would be the basis, unless the board wants to find separately that there's an imminent risk for its staff, the board, and the public to meet personally. It's not necessary. It's an either or. I would prefer to utilize Cal OSHA.
Okay, great. Then yes, that is all we need to move forward.
Thank you, Abby. So however we do this, as long as the administrative record is clear, then, and it sounds like it is, that the board is in favor of continuing and under the Cal OSHA findings, then I think we're good.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you, Abby, and thank you, Jesse. And I think we've got clear direction on that item.
Thank you.
Okay. And with that, which is item number 8, we will move on into our communication reports and staff reports.
I'll go first and be very brief. As you know, very busy here at TUD. I have been busy trying to support staff in all of our critical missions, including PG&E acquisition, the FERC 1061 relicensing campaign, messages. Yeah, it's a busy place. So yeah, been busy. That's all I have.
Thank you, Don. Any other news from staff or reports?
Eric, no.
You're done, Steve.
I'll just real quickly, like Don said, you guys heard way too much of me, but big highlight news while we were doing all of that is Thursday, we were wired $25 million for our construction interim financing. It's with our trustee. That's the next step in the USDA with the regional plant construction. And I believe we have October 13th is scheduled for the next pre-construction meeting. But the money's here, not here, but at the trustee. So that was the.
Thank you. Eric, you're good. Eric Collier, have anything you want to add?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, anybody else? Corey, do you see any other hands up?
Director Boatright just has his hand up for comment.
Okay.
Yeah, attended the Sonora Water Treatment Plant tour on the 22nd. And I want to say thank you, Trevor, for the information, staff that was there, and showing us exactly why we should be looking towards major rehab or replacement of, a nearing 100-year-old facility that provides potable water for our Sonora and Jamestown area.
Thank you, Director Boatright. Any other director would like to go next? Jeff.
Yeah, I'll just echo Director Boatright's comments there on the treatment plant tour. I really did enjoy that, and thanks again to Don and Trevor and Jakin and all the others that participated. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to see that that we've got some money in our CIP that will get us down the road there with some of those more pressing issues that were at the treatment plant, and hopefully we can get that taken care of here as quick as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kearns. Director Ringen?
Are you looking for my reporting in or comments from the water treatment plant?
Well, I think they're going to be one and the same. What don't you think? Would you like to report out on your how the tour went for you?
It went great. I just didn't want to be third person to echo what had already been said, but I was very impressed. I think staff, especially Trevor and the other water treatment operators, they were very, very helpful and gave us a ton of great information. And it made it very clear that something out there needs to be done ASAP. So at any rate, there's that. And then if you want me to I've got 2 items of what I did. So I'll give you those. That's on 9/20, met with GM Perkins and President Balin, and we had a really in-depth discussion about upcoming agenda items and some important things that just need to get done by the end of the year. That was number 1. And then on 9/22, attended the City of Sonora EAP meeting, and I have forwarded the information to GM Perkins and President Balin so that they know what's going on there. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Director Ringen. Director Murphy, do you have anything staff report at this time?
We have
our director's report.
We have a meeting coming up, and just to make people aware of that, should be listed out there that we have an HR and outreach meeting coming up. I believe it's on Thursday. So you can, if you want to attend, that's up on the TUD website.
Thank you. Reminders are important. So I'll wrap that up. I thought that our facilities tour was really great. Thank you to Trevor, Kurt, Jake, and Jakin. That was just an excellent presentation. And I just wanted to focus on the fact that building these kinds of rapports with the directors from the ground up allows the directors to see firsthand, even though we haven't gotten the Carollo technical report yet, we can actually see sort of what Trevor and his crew are actually dealing with, the condition of that asset. And it helps the board get their head around perhaps the priority of facility issues that we need to pay attention to when we're balancing that in our CIP with all our other competing CIP projects. And so I like the ground up. I think Director Boatwright said that if we have these kinds of things, it definitely does influence the decision and the outcome. Some of the outcomes might be different if we did not really understand from the ground up. And of course, I would like to involve Trevor in our committee meetings when we get the Carollo report, because the folks that work with these things every day, their comments and their insights are invaluable to us. And I think they're an undervalued and underutilized asset. So with that, I thought that was just extremely good. And I'm really looking forward to the Carollo technical report. And Don, is there any indication of when their report, the condition assessment, may hit our desks?
I don't see Trevor on anymore, but it's contingent upon Trevor and his crews, a couple of his crews going on a site tour to go see a couple of different options for sedimentation basins. So until Trevor and his crews go report back to Carollo on their findings, then they'll finalize report. So I'm thinking it's a couple of weeks away at earliest.
Okay, thank you. Then the last thing I wanted to report out on is Sunday, I took a hike up on the Columbia Canal west of the Regional Learning Center. And there were two projects there that I hadn't seen. I went out with Eric Johnson before they were rehabilitated. And I just want to give you a shout out, Eric. I saw that you had left the historic pipe, the old pipe in place, and then you had partially buried and then exposed the canal pipe, the new pipe, and left the old one in place. And there was even a little place where the dogs could still go underneath. And so I just really appreciate the interpretive value of having the old and the new juxtaposed to each other. I just wanted to say the impact on the slope up from the ditch facility was very minimal. And so you got in and got out without a lot of, scarring and tearing it up. And then further downstream, there was kind of where the slope had given way, and so that the crews had fortified the berm side of the slope and stabilized that, and then piped that section that was at risk. And I just want to say a really, really good job of that you guys did on those two projects. Thank you. And it was nice to come see them all done, because I had seen them before and they really were in need of repair. So really, really good job. And that's about all I need to report. I would encourage anybody to go walk that section of ditch. The leopard lilies are just astonishing. Of course, they're past their prime now, but it's a really, really beautiful section of the Columbia Canal with the dogwoods and the big leaf maples, and some hardwoods are in there because it's a north facing slope. So it's a good place to go on a hot day. So anyway, good job, Eric.
Well,
all your
and
crews.
yeah, just want to make sure that the board knows that that was really mostly the TUD crews that should be acknowledged and recognized for that effort. I was just the intermediary between some of the messages you provided. Those got delivered, it got executed on. It took several years, but it was TUD crews, Glenn and Eric, and the construction crews that really made that happen. So I was a very small part of it, but thank you. I'm glad you appreciated it, and I'm glad it turned out well.
Thank you. And the little group I was leading, I was able to kind of do a little mini interpretive program on it. And so it was just a good visual aid there. So yeah, good work. And please tell the crews that they did a great job.
I will certainly do that.
Okay, that's all I have to report for director's reports. Are there any other comments that directors would like to make at this time? Okay, seeing none, then we will recess the open portion of this meeting and we will go into our closed session at this time and then report back out after we're done.
Could we maybe have a few minutes?
Oh, and I need, yes, and I'm sorry, point of order on myself. Melissa, you need to read our closed session item, and I need to open it up for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Closed session A, public employee appointment, title, general manager.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment, Corey, on these items?
Not that I'm seeing at the moment, no.
Okay, then I will close, I'll recess our open portion. And let's have Director Ringen, how much time do you need?
Just a few minutes.
So
this is accident prevention.
So 5 minutes, Director Murphy, did I hear you?
15 instead. I need to eat something. It's.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so we will take a 15.
Use the facilities.
How long, Director Boatright?
15 would be fine.
Okay, let me see, what time is it? It's noon. We will, we'll move into our portal, okay, and then we'll take a 15-minute break. Okay.
And Abby.
So I'll be moving in the board members and also Abby, is that correct?
And Jesse.
And Jesse.
And
Okay.
Jesse.
I'll move you in now.
Okay. I think we're all here. We all here? Okay. Yep. All right. So I'm now going to reconvene back into open session. And the two items that I want to report out on, item A, okay, well, that's why we met. Okay, B, that we have no reportable action. And regarding consider approval of general manager employment agreement, we will consider, that will be considered at a future meeting. And if I miss anything, please, please speak up. Okay, so having said that, then I will adjourn our board meeting at 2:51. Thank you, everyone, and really seriously good working.
See y'all later.